Okay, a good day to everyone. Welcome to the 47th ARTDO conference and welcome to the Rejuvenating Track. Okay, just a simple announcement before we start. You do see the navigation button which Rita has mentioned earlier and also Ricky. If you have any questions, you go to the top under sessions, top right, you will see Q&A. Okay, you can type your questions there and our moderator will read from there. If you have any feedbacks, please put it in feed. And all inputs that you put under sessions and sessions feed and sessions Q&A are only restricted to this session and is not broadcasted across the platform. All right, and a few simple house rules. Please be courteous with your speech while you are at a lounge area or at a backstage. Not be respectful when addressing others or talking to others while you are at the lounge. We strictly do not condone profanities, and also please refrain from political discussions. We know each of us have our preference, but let's keep it to ourselves for today and tomorrow. Okay, if there are any disagreements, please be constructive and open to new ideas. And now, without much further ado, I would like to introduce our moderator for today, Kun Atip from Thailand. Now, he was a senior petroleum earth scientist, in other words, a geologist, and then rejuvenated as an executive and success coach. Okay, he's based in Thailand, Bangkok, and he has his own Facebook page called in the name of Atip Success Coach. All right, and he can be reached at his email, the Hotmail account, atipm@hotmail.com. Without taking on too much time, I will pass the stage over to Kun Atip. Kun Atip, over to you.
Hi, thank you, Eric.
You're welcome.
Sawadee krap, everyone. Atip from Bangkok as your moderator for Rejuvenating Track. We have three speakers, esteemed speakers for today. The first speaker, we will start off with Dr. Vinayshil Gautam. Dr. Gautam is an internationally acclaimed management thinker and practitioner. He has been conferred Lifetime Achievement Awards by 7 national and international institutions. He also received many various awards until he lost count of his awards. Dr. Gautam's talk title is Rejuvenating Beyond the Routine, Foundations of Fulfillment and Achievement from a managerial perspective. Let's welcome Dr. Gautam. Dr. Gautam, if you are ready, please begin your talk.
Yes, Atip, thank you so much. Pleasure to be here on the 47th celebration of the annual event of ARTDO. And from my office room in Delhi, I greet all of you all over the world and invite you to a conversation with me on the essentials of rejuvenation, which from my vantage point of perception is a routine affair if there is life. But the rejuvenation I want to talk to you is beyond the routine of keeping body and soul and existences going. What is it that causes fulfillment and a sense of achievement in each one of us? I would like to begin with two illustrations which come easily to mind, one specific to the event we are all participating. And as I wanted to observe the process of the unfolding of this conference, I observed President Rita Go with great interest and learning and noticed how she had rejuvenated this event, which is nearly completing 5 decades of existence, by altering the architecture and altering the medium of interaction of this conference. And you can see the results and the way 47th ARTDO International World Conference has panned out is a perfect example of rejuvenation. My compliments to you, Madam President. Another example which comes to my mind is of a lady in India who has redesigned the entire profession and created a title which is called fashion influencer. And she doesn't just walk the ramp or become the master chef, nor she just displays jewelry, but through various platforms of social media, she displays the products in its various resplendent glories and creates a market from them. And that's rejuvenation in the COVID times. Which brings me to the introductory portion of my remarks to you, which I hope to cover in about 15 minutes. And I'm going to divide it between the introduction and the substantial portion of my remarks. And the substantial portions will have, again, two segments, the processes and the conclusions. In the introductory portion of my remarks, I wish to share with you the fundamental character of rejuvenation, which I think runs at a physical level, emotional level, and spiritual level. Rejuvenation runs at a physical level in as much as it is rooted in material circumstances, and matter is a major medium of expression of human life. You express yourself through your body, you express yourself through use of earth, water, metals, and even enabling areas of getting these matters and materials to productive use, like through fertilizers and what have you. I would also like to mention that human beings are not just material existences, but they are driven out of emotions. They are driven out of a sense of feeling, and I'll have more to talk of that to you in course of time. I would also like to emphasize the spiritual character of existence, and the way I understand it, it is the spiritual aspects which brings life to life. The resultant product which then goes around this planet is the human being or a life entity. And I don't want to get into the different ways of perceiving life, but I would simply like to confine myself to saying that to bring a human being into a full-fledged operational situation, you have to understand that a human being emerges out of different kinds of influences which go into the making of his mind, his emotions, his body, and indeed the way his spirit manifests itself. There is a shortage of time because we have to fit in what I have to say in 15 minutes, and there are other equally distinguished speakers who have their little bit to add on to the larger picture of this conference. Therefore, I will merely tabulate the influences which I think go into the making of a human persona. These are natal influences, prenatal influences, childhood experiences, boyhood experiences, adulthood experiences, experiences of reading, experimenting, and experiencing. And that's what makes a person. Therefore, one begins wondering if there is matter, emotion, and spirit, what unifies it? And the way I would like to simplify all this is to say that it gets unified through a experience of judgment and experience of instinct. Through judgment, you combine all these experiences, and through instincts, you operate it. It will be useful to remind ourselves that there is such a thing as a physical rejuvenation. It goes by age, it goes by the daily cycle, it goes by the way you acquit your habits. And to sprint through it quickly, let me give you one example of how rejuvenation takes place through age. The density of your bones does not change very much after the age of 30. Therefore, the rejuvenation of bones stops at 30. And the older you get, if your bones are getting into trouble, you get into trouble, and there is very little you can do about bringing life to the bones. Now, similarly, you will have to recognize that as life rolls on, you live through the activities of your different organs and cells come alive. They come alive, especially when you rest, they rejuvenate themselves. I will not have occasion to develop that theme further because it would come more under the medical schema, but it would be important to refer to it. And finally, the spiritual evolution, spiritual rejuvenation is an important connect amongst these three. Therefore, rejuvenation becomes synonymous with life, and there is this Latin statement, panthare, everything changes. So when there is a no choice situation, it is wise to focus on the possible strengths, and therefore we have to look from the vantage point of the era we are in, the COVID era, and see what are the strengths which are likely to emerge of what we are currently going through. I will now move on to explaining the process issues of my remarks. And my process issues will be rooted around a simple belief. An external reality is not a shared reality by everyone who goes through it. If there are 5 people witnessing a reality, there will be 5 perceptions to it, and each perception becomes a reality for that person. Therefore, reality is interpreted through reason and emotion. So if you want to rejuvenate consciously, you have to work upon your reason and your emotion. The way you practice your reasoning and the way you control your emotions will be the determining factor of a conscious rejuvenation of your personality. This is embedded in the power of the mind. And anyone who has taken an interest on how the mind works, the strength of the mind can be both deepened and widened by practice, reading, and through meditation. Now, I would like to focus all this on 2 keywords which were spelled out in the title of the presentation itself. What does it have to do with fulfillment and achievement? Fulfillment is a sense of satisfaction. Achievement is a feeling of having arrived where you aspired to arrive. So between satisfaction and an aspiration is the space where this talk will operate, because fulfillment can be in terms of material assets, your resources. It can be in terms of interpersonal assets, because if you can meet a person whose framework matches yours, you feel fulfilled. That is what successful emotional relationships are about. The emotional relationship between a parent and a child, between 2 adults, between a man and a woman, between one person and a team, between one team and another, and the list can go on. The spiritual achievement has to do with the human sensory system and life-giving element, and that can be a little elusive for those who do not understand how life itself comes alive through the prana tattva, that is the life-giving substance. To make this whole conversation a little more earthy and a little more closer to your everyday experience, I would like to submit 3 ideas to you. If you wish to rejuvenate, learn to control your resources. All types of resources, material, emotional, and abstract ones, including time, and the way to do it is through the instrumentality of decision making. Then your ability to realize realities. If at the age of 24 you want to feel like 14, then there is clearly a disconnect, and this can be multiplied. If at the age of 54 you believe you are 24, even your diet will get into serious trouble. And if by the time you are 74 you think you are 54, then I think there is nothing more to add to the external circumstances. Therefore, my submission is a simple one. If you want to look at rejuvenation, understand the realities which surround you. And finally, remember, there is also the spirit, and the spirit is in terms of the power of the dreams, love, commitment, softer emotions. Therefore, achievement matches the aspiration. There are constraints, because rejuvenation means shedding of the old and accepting of the new. Your beliefs may need to be changed. because the belief which you had when science and technology was at a particular level is no longer valid. Therefore, the third part of my submission to you, the action program and how to take it forward. The action program will mean be prepared to do some reprogramming of your belief. Understand your personality code and understand how you need to keep upgrading yourself. Therefore, panthare, as I said in Latin, means continuous change. You must understand the vulnerability of your emotions. Do not be embarrassed of your emotions. There is nothing wrong in crying if you are upset, and there is nothing wrong with laughing heartily if you are joyful. If you acknowledge your emotions, you are feeding your whole persona to experience the external reality. Examine your assumptions, because your assumption and approaches, if they don't serve you, they need to be shed. You need to be a growing person, and that's rejuvenation. And finally, get rid of toxic relationships. If people who are in contact with you cannot help you to grow, well, I think you need to examine how to change them or how to change your relationships. But there is another dimension to it. And sometimes I express it, you would have no reason to change your friends if you knew that your friends can change. That brings me to the concluding portion of my remarks, where I'll make some recommendations and I'll leave with you some takeaways. My recommendations are basically 5. The first of them is seek an understanding rather than agreement. If the other person understands you, you are lucky. If you can get him to agree, even it's better. But the objective of any conversation, any dealing should be understanding. Agreement should follow. It cannot be a demand, because then you are up with an ally which you may not be able to negotiate. Remember, there is no template of relationships. Each relationship creates its own script, its own paradigm, and its own assumptions, and it must roll out. No two marriages are ever the same. No two friendships are ever the same, even though there may be certain commonality of fondness underpinning all that. The third recommendation is growing is a painful process. There are pangs of growth. Therefore, rejuvenation requires keeping up with the efforts of the routine. And routine is more difficult than innovation. People at times find that an unusual statement, but to be innovative is an effort of the mind. To be routinized and observe that routine is a matter of habit, which is much more difficult to form. And I personally find the challenges of keeping up with the routine far greater than the challenges of being innovative, which I agree are challenging enough. And finally, my fifth recommendation is you cannot manage others, but you can manage yourself. Therefore, to manage yourself, you have to be a light to yourself. And in Sanskrit, there is a statement, Atma Deepo Bhava. Be a light unto yourself. In the ultimate analysis, it's your life, it's your choices, it's your decisions. Therefore, work on yourself. When you can't change others, change yourself to deal with them. Which brings me to the last component of my connect with you. And I want to share with you the following takeaways. First and foremost, there is no substitute for clarity. Be clear in what you are about, what you want to do, where you want to get, and how you want to get. And believe me, these tasks are themselves very demanding. Listen to your inner voice, because ultimately you have to be at peace with your inner voice. And while doing all that, don't be judgmental. The other person is not evil merely because he doesn't agree with you. The other person is not wrong because he doesn't see things your point of view. Therefore, communication is the key. If you are in a state of lack of clarity or turmoil, wait till calmness returns to you before you act. And that is the essence of rejuvenation. And finally, the thought which I would like you to take away with you while you mull over the merits and the applicability of what I said, ride energies, rejuvenate yourself, and I'm sure you will be met with fulfillment and achievement. Best of luck. I hope you have enjoyed listening to it as much as I have enjoyed sharing my thoughts with you. We'll catch up in the question and answer session. Bye for now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gautam, for sharing your insightful insights in the rejuvenating beyond our routine. I think our participants might have some questions for you, so I will keep those questions for you and we'll ask them at the Q&A session when all three speakers have finished their talks. So our next speaker, Dato Dr. Aini Ideris. Dato Dr. Aini is the former Vice Chancellor of University Putra, Malaysia. She won various awards nationally and internationally. For example, the winner of National Academic Award, Product Commercialization, and inventor of poultry vaccines, and also a Lifetime Achievement Award. Dr. Aini's talk title is Rejuvenating by Aligning with Your Life's Passion. Let's welcome Dr. Aini. Dr. Aini,
Thank
when
you.
you are ready, please begin your talk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Atip Wangsuan. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me share my slide first. I hope you can see the slide. Mr. Atip, are we okay? Mr. Atip, are we okay?
Yes, I can see your slide.
Okay, thank you very much. I will share with you today my thoughts on rejuvenating, taking some slightly different angle from what Dr. Gautam mentioned just now, because what I'm going to share is more of my experiences. We have heard from Dr. Gautam about the fundamentals, characteristic of rejuvenation, that is physical, spiritual, and emotional. So my thought today will be something along that line, but in the my experience form rather than the fundamentals. So my name is Aini from University Putra Malaysia, or UPM in short. And UPM is an agriculture-based university and has been championing agriculture in the country. It is a research university with an array of disciplines besides agriculture, and it is located within the multimedia super corridor, 10 minutes drive to Putrajaya. Those have been to Putrajaya and our administrative capital, and 30 minutes drive to Kuala Lumpur, our city centre. Okay, what do we understand by rejuvenation? Dr. Gautam has mentioned a lot of things just now about rejuvenation, and all those are really the very thing that fundamentals of rejuvenation that all of us would be happy to know about. And my talk today will be more towards toward the example that I'm giving. My understanding in relation to the talk that I'm giving today is that rejuvenation often refers to a process that makes a person feels young and energetic again, as Dr. Gautam mentioned just now, from activities that brings freshness to a person. When you think of rejuvenation, we often think of the time to go for a good refreshing massage or spend time in spa, perhaps to go up the mountain. Of course, your bone may not take it. For those who can still climb, go to the beach, go for holidays, etc. For us to feel better, to feel rejuvenated. But as mentioned by Dr. Gautam, rejuvenation is more than that. The word regenerate holds a very interesting, refreshing feeling. It sort of rekindles or resurrects life either in oneself, at home, or at work. Rejuvenation also refers to things that make an organization or system moves effectively by introducing new methods, ideas, or people to reach specified goals. So it's not just for the people, regeneration can also be applied to organization. Let me talk about a little bit about UPM. We select highly qualified academic team from the best of the best in the country who are passionate in teaching and learning, research, development, innovation and commercialization, and of course must have a good communication skill. When there is meaning to what we are doing, then we do what we love and love what we do. Only then we do things, teach, learn, research from the heart, and nothing becomes a burden to us. We become rejuvenated at every successful outcomes. One of the things that I did when I was appointed as the Vice Chancellor of UPM in 2016 was to instill the concept of ihsan in staff and students to regenerate them in their work culture. Ihsan actually is an Arabic word, but it applies across race, across religion and countries. The meaning of ihsan includes every good deed or work performed correctly, efficiently and professionally, with sincerity and integrity, to achieve perfection with high quality and achieving excellence, without expecting rewards or recognitions. The key words here is without expecting rewards or recognitions. Ihsan regenerates staff by embracing good values, making them feel good and be responsible in carrying out the work being trusted onto them. When that happens, what would be the impact on the institution? Staff become more happy, more creative and innovative, and more productive, including in teaching, research and services. University achieves more success, receive many awards. One of them, as mentioned here, is the National Intellectual Property Award, and many others, including international awards. The university also improved in World University ranking. The latest, you are ranked 132 in QS World University ranking, compared to 331 in 2016, and ranked second in Malaysia. For universities 50 years old and below, UPM is now ranked 10th in the world, compared to 38 in 2016. Of course, there are pros and cons in ranking. Many people are for ranking, many are not for ranking. But as far as UPM is concerned, we use it as a benchmark with other top universities being evaluated by the third party to improve ourselves in our core areas, teaching and learning, research and professional services, and making UPM more visible internationally. So it's more of benchmarking to help us improving ourselves. And that gives us more advantage in bringing in more international staff and students. The students and staff are more happy and proud of our achievements, which again regenerates them further. They want to do more and more for the university. They want to do more and more for themselves, and they feel very regenerated. In my case, how did I keep on rejuvenating? After being in the university for more than 40 years. It's through my passion in teaching and learning, research and providing professional services, especially to the community. Okay, let's talk about my research. My research focuses on food security. Food security exists when all people at all times have access to sufficient, safe and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. And food insecurity exists when people do not have adequate physical, social and or economic access to food as defined above. Poultry is an important source of protein in Malaysia. How are they being reared? Basically, they are reared under three management systems. The free range system. This is in the rural areas where people let loose the birds. They're just running around, roaming around without proper housing. Semi-intensive, and of course, the modern one is the intensive system. Modern commercial farms with enclosed houses, and some of those even with very good ventilation. People in rural areas depend on poultry as a cheap source of protein. However, diseases are their main problems. One of the important diseases that can wipe out the entire population if they are not vaccinated is Newcastle disease, where 100% of birds can die due to this disease. You can see that in a shed, sometime when you get up in the morning, all the birds are dead, and this is due to Newcastle disease if they are not being protected. Vaccination in free-range chicken is a big problem because the birds are let loose. They're not housed, and there is a need to catch individual birds to do vaccination. So we developed vaccine which is heat resistant and easy to deliver, and this has given lots of interest, especially in developing countries which have village chickens. From the technology that we have learned from the development of this disease, we have successfully developed 3 other vaccines, commercialized them, and in the process of commercializing another 3 vaccines. Our vaccines have penetrated 22 countries and more to come. Of course, our team become very rejuvenated with all the success that we have with our research. And I feel much rejuvenated every time I see my research products being used in the farm and every time UPN is being recognized. The other vaccine that I mentioned is for fowlpox vaccine. Some of you may have seen chicken with this kind of condition. It is a cutaneous form or it can be a diphtheritic form. And we produce this vaccine by cloning the virus and propagating via tissue culture. And this vaccine has also been commercialized and been sold in 22 countries. This disease will make the bird very difficult to eat and difficult to breathe. We also developed diagnostic kits for Newcastle disease virus, avian influenza, bird flu. If you all know about bird flu, we developed this and was one of those that we used for the detection of avian influenza in the country when it first had the outbreak in early years. We also developed rapid diagnostics kit for detection of infectious bacterial disease virus and mycoplasmosis. These are all poultry diseases, very important poultry diseases. The research has brought many awards and recognitions to me and to my team. Everyone is always feel very rejuvenated, feeling very fresh when we are being recognized in many ways. I would like to end my talk to have this thought on regeneration and one's passion. We must always change, renew, rekindle, and regenerate ourselves by pursuing with our passion. If we are very passionate with our work and pursue our work and do well in the work that we are doing, will be always feel very rejuvenated. You don't feel tired. You don't feel very. You don't feel that you are down or you don't feel that you are being forced to do it because you are very passionate about your work and you always rekindle, renew, and regenerate. If not, we become hardened. This man has his own passion. My research team, my students, my postgraduate students. Thank you very much and best wishes to everyone.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aini, for sharing your words of wisdom about rejuvenation and also sharing your passion and your team passion with us. Then we will have questions for you at the end of our session in the Q&A session. So next, I would like to move on to our next speaker, which is the last speaker, Dr. Badr Turaiji. Dr. Badr is the founder and CEO of Dato Consultancy and Training. He is also a former CEO of Yerko Medical in Kuwait. And Dr. Badr's talk title is Leadership of Small Businesses Post-COVID-19. Leadership of Small Businesses Post-COVID-19. Let's welcome Dr. Badr. Dr. Badr, you are muted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I would like also to extend my thanks to my colleagues. Their presentations were quite enlightening, and I would see them as setting the stage for my presentation. From my perspective, I'm going to speak from a pragmatic point of view, a practical point of view. In my capacity as an advisor and a consultant, I also advise the National Fund in Kuwait for small and medium-sized enterprises. And I have witnessed firsthand the issues and challenges the young entrepreneurs are facing in the COVID crisis. So I thought that I would highlight the issues there, and I would very much welcome your questions and thoughts on what I have observed and try to share with you. Sharing the presentation, I hope it's clear. Is it, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, yes, yeah.
All right. So, what have we learned from the crisis so far? And how did the crisis do all of this to us? What happened is something beyond anybody's imagination. If you had talked to anybody in any business field back in September 2019 about the prospect and what are his or her strategy or issues or challenges in 2020, definitely a pandemic of that magnitude would not come to mind. And I'm sure that most of us, even in the first quarter of 2020, we had our plans and ambitions about growth and penetrating of markets or introducing new products and what have you. But we never thought that we come to a standstill. And we had to really revisit the whole scope of the whole size of our business and revisit everything that we have done so far. So we went all of a sudden from a growth mode or merger mode or whatever mode in a strategy perspective into a survival mode. Basically, many of the small businesses around the world, and I must say even bigger and much bigger businesses, they went into the survival mode, and at the end, the crisis humbled us. It brought us down to reality. It brought us down to basics. It brought us down to, I would say, even primitive challenges that we thought that we would overcome them long time ago. And this took us into the crisis management forefront. All of a sudden, all our leadership skills and all our style of management have changed, and we developed the crisis management mode. So many of those who have survived and still surviving the crisis are basically trying to say that, or they're trying to show and practice on daily basis their skills in crisis management. So it's not about empowerment anymore. It's not about a higher level of team and team building and relationship. It's all down to business, roll up your sleeve and try to settle the issues firsthand. And in terms of the financial acumen, it also was a slap on the face. It brought us back to reality. It told us clearly and vividly the old wisdom that is engraved in every stone everywhere in the world, that cash is king. And I have noticed that the entrepreneurs who had some cash on their hand, they were in a position to really sit back and not panic and think things through and try to weigh options against each other before they make a decision. They didn't go into the full crisis mode like others because they still have some buffer for them to make them survive. So this old rule of thumb, all wisdom, that cash is king, became the forefront in the financial acumen in the small businesses. And secondly, I have noticed that although this has been always an issue and some challenge for the small businesses to manage their accounts payable and accounts receivable, it became more prudent in this time of COVID-19. People start working like crazy to secure the money that people owe them. And at the same time, they try to negotiate and try to extend as much as they can the money and the account payable to others as much as they can. And everybody else that they had worked with had the same issue. Everybody wanted to keep the money that he has or she has, and at the same time try to collect from his customers that money that they owe him or her. So it became more or less like a catch-22. You owe people money and you must pay them, and they are knocking on your door asking for their payments. And at the same time, people owe you money and you are knocking on their doors asking for your money back. So it's all back to basics. Cash is king, and manage your accounts payable and receivable. These are the most two important financial management rules for any business, whether it's small or large, but it became more evident, more relevant, and more critical for the small businesses in the time of COVID. And although the young entrepreneurs, they pride themselves about embracing technology and using it to their benefit, let's not forget that many of the entrepreneurs are not really into technology, or they use the bare minimum to get their business through. But when curfew took places in different parts of the world, when you couldn't meet your team members, when you couldn't do things the old way, if I may say, then you had to revert to technology to help you out. So I have noticed that many leaders of the small businesses, they tried to exploit the technology at their disposal as much as they could. So all of a sudden, we've seen that the adaptation of technology, or the adoption of technology, has improved significantly, and it went through the roof because people were forced by that to begin with. And secondly, because they noticed the value that the technology could bring to their business. And it is definitely the way forward. We used to say that, and many people consider this as a cliche, but we noticed, whether you are in the business world or in the charity world or you are in the government world, that people reverted to technology in spite of themselves. And they have noticed the value that technology could bring them in speeding up the business, and the efficiency, the effectiveness, the satisfaction of the user. Not to mention, now it's becoming more and more a norm, an expectation of your client to use technology rather than doing it the old way. But when it comes to people, there were peculiar challenges. Many businesses had to shrink. They were forced to shrink. They were forced to size down their businesses. And usually when this happens, people get hit. So the small businesses, they start to witness the stress and anxiety. The owners themselves were stressed out. They were anxious about the present and the future. And also at the same time, their staff, their team members, albeit small or big, they became stressed and anxious themselves about job security, about the challenges in the community, the worry about the disease and its impact on their beloved ones or themselves. So all of a sudden, we noticed that the magnitude of stress and anxiety have increased significantly during this era, whether it is the business owner, him or herself, or his or her team members. And we saw the introduction of flexible work. So people started working more from home. They were not obliged to come to office. Even meetings were held online. They got recorded, minuted, using other tools and softwares to help them collaborate better, whether it is using Slack or Microsoft Teams, whether using Zoom or Teams or any other venue like AirMeet and what have you to get their work going on. And the big issue of laying off people. Many decisions, unfortunately, had to be made about laying off people to bring the cost down in the survival mode. And it was something that many of those owners and leaders of small and medium-sized businesses definitely didn't want to do, but they couldn't help it. They were in a survival mode and they had to do everything in their capacity to bring their cost down. And so they have either laid off people, or they negotiated the salaries, or they converted people from working full-time to part-time with all the challenges that came with that, or they just simply froze hirement and asked people to work without payment for a while till things shape up or till they can see what's going on in the environment. And the leadership style itself has changed. It became more empowering people at every level. Everybody, the communication was wide open. The transparency became the platform that people work on. And leadership had to trust its employees and had to give them the kind of empowerment that they were looking for. The old style of do what I do and directing people because of, it's a small business and I know better, I know my business better than the others, simply didn't work anymore. You had to have the power of conviction, you had to have the communication style, you had to have all the elements and all the competencies of leadership, a different kind of leadership, beyond just crisis management to really get through till today. So this made me think that there is a revised competency model of leadership, not the old one. And this is based on crisis management, adaptability, and change management. I found those competencies became more relevant and more important in the time of COVID. And not to mention the negotiations power. You had to negotiate with your employees, you had to negotiate with your customers, you had to negotiate with the government entities, you had to negotiate with your vendors. So your skills and your competency in negotiations became more relevant and more important. Not to mention, people started to become more innovative and more creative in terms of delivery of service or in terms of delivery of products, in terms of managing their assets, in terms of managing their costs. So the revised competency model is based on those 5 competencies. And if you see them, that usually when things are back to normal, that many of those competencies will take the back seat, and probably in the field of small businesses, you will only see that innovation and creativity stand there as still one of the critical competencies, but the others will take the back seat eventually. But for the time being, I see that those 5 competencies are very much relevant to the situation we are in. Thank you very much, and I would welcome all your questions in the question and answer session. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Badr. for sharing your thoughts and strategies for small businesses, to cope with the COVID-19 situation. And let's go to our Q&A session. We have one question from the in Q&A box for Dr. Badr. The question is, Dr. Badr, you talk about small businesses, but how is it different to experiences of larger businesses? So, Dr. Badr, how is it different to the larger businesses?
Well, it's easy to say that when it comes to bigger businesses, it becomes more complicated. And it is not anymore relevant to a single person leading a group of 3 or 5 or 7. You would have a C-level executives, and you have to ensure that your team is really well aligned with you in what you want to do for the organization. So it's about the complexity rather than what is needed. I still do believe that the new competency model will still stand true for small businesses as much as it is for big businesses. And if we look around and try to see the successful businesses that they have managed to live through the pandemic with little negative impact, you would see that most instances that they have developed this competency model, whether consciously or subconsciously. And there is another question. I don't know whether it's directed to me. It says, what new markets?
I think for you as well, Dr. Badr, what new markets do you see opening up in the future because of COVID-19?
I would confine this to the small businesses. I think the pandemic gave a trajectory to the technology in the small business. And although we have witnessed this to begin with since the inception of the National Fund for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises, but when we look at the technology sector that we were funding in Kuwait, for example, it constitutes less than 10%. But when we look at, in the last 3 months, what's going on among our entrepreneurs and the kind of new initiatives that are coming up, it is more than 40% are technology centered. So I think the technology, and you could see that the technology became a defensive sector globally when it comes in the crisis time. And I don't see the small businesses are any different from that.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Badr. So let's get back to Dr. Gautam. Dr. Gautam, I also have one question for you relating to your topic. What could be the challenges for us all to rejuvenate beyond our routine? And how could we tackle those challenges? Dr. Gautam? You are muted. You are muted. Dr. Gautam, you are muted. Could you please unmute?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Well, that's a question which I think could take a whole day to answer, but let me try to digitize the answer, because the flavor of the day is talking of digitization. So it can't be just technical. We digitize what we want to say too. My answer or response to that question, not so much an answer, is if you can have conviction with openness, and if you can allow other people to talk, and add the spirit of doing things that are right rather than doing things right. These three are the tripod legs on which the case can stand. Let me repeat the third submission which I made first. Doing the right things rather than attempting to do things right. Have conviction with openness and allow others to talk. We love our voice so much, we seldom hear what the other person is trying to say. And there's always complicated situation. There is more to say, but I'd like to stop there.
Yeah, thank you so much for your insightful answer. Yes. And can we have one last question? Yeah, for Dr. Aini. Yeah, Dr. Aini. Yeah, thank you for sharing your passion in your work. Yeah, but I was wondering, for the people who cannot find their life's passion, like you, what would be your advice or recommendation to them? Yeah.
Okay, can you repeat? Sorry, there's some words not clear.
For those people who cannot find their own life's passion,
Okay.
what would be your advice to them? Yeah.
Well, I'm sure everyone has their own life passion. It's just that they're not sure what they are, probably. And but as I said, when I mentioned about that, I still the concept of ihsan in our staff is for them to feel that things, whatever that they want to do, or they asked to do, or their responsibility, that they would do it to the best of their ability without thinking of getting any rewards or recognitions. I think if we have that kind of feeling, if we have in our in ourselves, that we do not worry about what other people say, what other people do, but what we do, we give our best and we do it with excellence, no matter whether anyone is looking at us or not. But our target is to go to achieve excellence. And I'm sure if everyone thinks about it, there'll be something that they have the passion that they want to do, and they would do it well. It's just that things that you have to think about it, but they must have that feeling. It does not matter whether anybody will see it or not. They will get their own reward in another way, one way or another, and they'll be happy to do it without even somebody recognizing them. And I think that would be the thing that I would advise them to just do things that they like to do. It does not matter what it is, and at the end of the day, they feel very satisfied with what they have done.
Thank you, Dr. Aini.
Thank you.
Thank you. As a moderator, I hope that our participants get some insights or some key takeaways from our rejuvenating session to bring to apply in their personal and professional life, especially during this tough time of COVID-19 that we are all facing together. So with this, I like to end with the quote that I love from Dr. Aini that said, "We must always change, renew, rejuvenate ourselves, otherwise we harden." Thank you all the speakers and all participants for joining our productive and very useful session. With this, I'd like to turn over the stage back to our host, Eric. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ko Natip. With time running out on catching up on us, let me pass you to my colleagues, Mr. Kwa, Dr. Leo, Sarah Lee, and also Kenneth for the upcoming track for reinventing. So I will close this session now, and please feel free to join the next session. Okay, bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
All
much.
speakers, and thank you
Thank you very much.
moderator.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.